It was supposed to be the beginning of a new life. The kind of story Amaya Brooks had dreamt of during long, bitter winters in the city where no matter how educated or poised she was, the color of her skin always stood in the way. Standing on a station platform in the dusty town of Fairgrove, she felt a flutter of hope and apprehension. Her dress was modest but elegant, her shoes freshly polished, and on her head was a delicate hat she'd saved weeks to afford. 3 weeks of train rides across the country, 6 months of heartfelt letters, and now, this moment. The man approaching her looked hesitant, a bouquet drooping in his hand as though it sensed the discomfort already gathering in his chest. When he stopped short, his mouth moved, but no sound came out. "You're Maya Brooks," he finally said. His voice cracked under the strain of disbelief. "Yes," she replied gently. His face paled. "This isn't going to work. You didn't say. I didn't know that you were black." Amaya finished the sentence for him. Calmly, clearly, without flinching. "I didn't realize I had to spell it out." She watched his eyes dart around the station, saw the panic growing behind them. People were watching. Travelers, workers, curious passers-by who now slowed just enough to catch a glimpse of the spectacular black woman in a pristine traveling suit being turned away like a parcel sent to the wrong address. "In your letters," he stammered, "you wrote so well." "I imagined." He couldn't finish. "You could have warned me." "Warned you?" Amaya repeated, her voice like silk hiding steel. "That my skin is dark, but my soul just as worthy? That my heart feels joy, hurt, and love the same way yours does?" "You never asked." Harold Bell, the man she had trusted with her hopes, looked away. "You don't understand. It's not just about me. This town, my shop, the church. Can't accept this. I can pay for your return fare. You seem smart. I'm sure you'll understand." Amaya's heart thudded, not in sadness, but in fury barely held in check. "I spent everything I had to get here," she said, voice steady. "There is no going back. There's nothing left to go back to." Harold fumbled in his coat and pulled out a handful of bills, extending them like they could undo the humiliation he'd just inflicted. That's when a deep, commanding voice rang out from behind him. "That's your solution, Bell? Toss some cash and pretend the problem isn't yours." Both Amaya and Harold turned. A tall man in simple, well-fitted clothes approached with a stride full of purpose. Sun-darkened skin, hands calloused from honest labor, and a posture that said this was a man who answered to no one. Yet there was elegance too, the kind that came from wealth and confidence long established. "Ronan Dorsey," the stranger said, extending a hand to Amaya. "On a property not far from town. You're welcome to stay there until you figure things out." "Ronan, this has nothing to do with you," Harold blurted, his voice cracking. "I've known you for 15 years, Belle," Ronan replied coolly. "Long enough to know when you're being a coward. Miss Brooks deserves better than this display." Amaya hesitated. She had learned the hard way that charity from strangers often came with invisible strings. "I assure you," Ronan continued, his eyes meeting hers with something that resembled respect, "there are no expectations. We have guest quarters, a full staff. Consider it temporary shelter in your terms." Harold flushed. "What will people say?" "They'll say whatever they like," Ronan said. "But they'll keep doing business with me, because without my land, their shops, homes, and schools don't exist. So I'd love to hear what exactly they'd say." Amaya studied the man. This wasn't pity. This was power. Carefully measured, unapologetically used. She gave a small nod. The Dorsey estate was nothing like she imagined. More a mansion than a farmhouse. It sprawled across rolling hills bordered by lush orchards and horse pastures. As their carriage pulled through the gates, Amaya kept her hands in her lap, chin high, mind racing. The pain of Harold's rejection still stung, but something about this new place made her want to brace herself like something more was coming. "Fairgrove doesn't adapt easily," Ronan said as they rode. "People here wear tradition like armor. Harold Bell's just a symptom of a much deeper illness." His housekeeper, Mrs. Thorne, met them at the door. Middle-aged, sharp-eyed, composed. "Miss Brooks," she said without blinking. The blue guest room's been made ready. No surprise. No es nada. Just smooth professionalism. That night, dinner was served in a dining room fit for a governor. Ronan shared his story, born to a northern banker and a southern teacher who had risked everything for abolitionist work. He'd inherited a fortune, yes, but also a belief in fairness few could understand in Fairgrove. "What about you, Miss Brooks?" he asked. "I taught literature and history at a girls' school in Boston," she said, "until funding dried up. And options, too." What she didn't dare say was that she had also inherited something far more valuable, a set of historical documents from her grandfather, a butler once enslaved, who had carefully preserved records that pointed to massive land fraud in Fairgrove. She kept them hidden beneath a false bottom in her trunk. Days passed. Ronan gave her space. His library became her sanctuary. She devoured every book on property law, land rights, Fairgrove history. On the surface, she was simply helping organize a chaotic collection. In truth, she was preparing for something bigger. And word had spread. Townswomen dropped by with excuses to visit. The local pastor appeared for tea. Rumors stirred. The woman Harold Bell rejected had not left. She had settled in. Even Harold returned hat in hand, guilt poorly disguised. "I just came to check if Miss Brooks is well," he said. "She can speak for herself," Ronan replied. Amaya entered in a dress Mrs. Thorne had tailored for her. Regal, calm, the kind of presence that drew silence. "Mr. Bell," she greeted. "What a surprise." The church committee is concerned," he muttered. "A woman living here. Unmarried. And well, in black." Ronan's voice was deadly soft. No host. Propriety," Harold stammered. "We're discussing options to help her return." Amaya smiled tightly. "How kind. Unfortunately, I'll be staying. Mr. Dorsey has offered me a position organizing the estate's library." Harold choked. "That's not a real job." "It's real enough," Ronan said. "She's the most competent person I've hired in years." What Harold didn't know was that the Dorsey Library housed old deeds, maps, and records exactly the kind Amaya needed. And she'd already found enough to piece together a truth long buried. Much of Fairgrove had been built on stolen land once promised to her great-grandfather, a freedman named Elijah Freeman. 2 weeks later, the town's leaders packed into the courthouse for a community emergency meeting. "She's disrupting our values," Harold thundered. "Ronan's enabling her." Then the doors opened. Amaya walked in with Ronan at her side. Heads turned. The whispers stopped. "Miss Brooks is here as the legal representative of a matter that concerns you all," Ronan announced. Harold laughed bitterly. "Legal representative? She's no lawyer." Amaya opened her briefcase. "I have legal authority granted as heir to Elijah Freeman," she said. "I possess deeds signed by the state in 1866, granting him land that now makes up 60% of this town, including your store, Mr. Bell." Gasps filled the room. Judge McCaffrey took the documents. "These appear authentic." Harold shouted, "Forgery!" "Along with these are testimonies, census records, and corroborating documents," Amaya said calmly, "including the account of how Elijah Freeman was driven out by threats and violence in 1871. Your ancestors then divided his land in secret." The room trembled with silence. "I'm not here to dismantle homes," Amaya continued. "I'm proposing a foundation one that uses part of this land's profits to fund schools, health care, and housing for the entire community." "You want to rewrite history?" Harold hissed. "No," she said. "I want to correct it." The judge nodded solemnly. "We will consider your proposal. This deserves real review." As the crowd dispersed, Ronan turned to her. "You could have taken everything and become like them," she replied. "No, justice isn't revenge. It's repair." 6 months later, Fairgrove had transformed. The Freeman Foundation had built 2 schools, funded dozens of scholarships, and turned Harold's old store into the town's first public library. Harold himself had vanished, rumors placing him in a hardware job in a nearby county. "Most people would have destroyed him," Ronan said one afternoon, watching children play near the converted estate. "Revenge is short-lived," Amaya said. This, this last. The town now called her a hero. Historians studied her case. She gave talks on civil rights and historic restitution. And when she and Ronan quietly married, their home became a symbol not of dominance, but of unity. In a town square, a plaque now told Elijah Freeman's story. A simple truth etched in bronze. That land taken through injustice had finally been returned to serve all. As dusk settled over Fairgrove, Amaya sat on the porch, tea in hand, watching light dance across rooftops. "You know the irony?" she said to Ronan. "Harold rejected me because I didn't fit his image. And that's exactly what brought his legacy down." "Your strength," Ronan replied, "was what he feared and what changed everything." And in that moment, beneath the stars, Amaya Brooks Dorsey knew true justice wasn't about tearing down. It was about building something no one could tear apart.